All right, the meeting of the General Laws and Technology Committee will come to order. Will you open the voting? Everybody, if you're here, log on.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
All right, we have a quorum. We have one bill, and so Delegate Williams, so you present your bill. So.
Thank you, sir. And I'd like to start by saying thank you to Senator Barker for having this committee hearing for me. I apologize for not making it the other day. Thank you to the committee members. Whatever happens, I appreciate being able to state what my bill is about. Effectively, my bill would remove churches, synagogues, mosque, other places of worship from the emergency services and disaster law. This comes on our First Amendment rights to gather and worship, and we saw that infringed over the last 2 years, and this would remove the ability to do that. So I'm here for any questions.
All right. Are there any questions of the patron?
I have a question.
Yes, Senator Locke.
So does this mean that in the event of a pandemic, places of worship would still be able to gather?
Yes, ma'am.
In crowds?
Yes, ma'am.
Senator Parker.
All right. Senator Evan.
What about in the circumstance like they had in Boston a few years ago when there were I would ask the delegate, when they were looking for the shooter and they had to close down certain neighborhoods, if that was on a Sunday and they wanted to have declare certain areas because of active police investigations off limits, that would say that people would be able to enter them if it was in a church?
So this bill would not limit any church or other places of worship from closing to help with that. It wouldn't limit that. It just says that our government can't shut the doors pursuant to our First Amendment right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor of the bill?
If you are in the Zoom room and wish to speak in favor of the bill, please raise your hand electronically now. Mr. Chair, we have a couple speakers virtually. Ernest Costello, please unmute to begin your testimony.
Can you hear me now? Should I do video?
Yes, we hear you.
Should I be on screen? Is that okay?
Sure.
Thank you so much for having me and providing this opportunity for those of us in the community who are in the church area to be able to speak. It is greatly appreciated. I'm speaking in favor of it as the pastor of Grace Church of Fredericksburg for the simple reason that when the pandemic began, Governor Northam was able to use executive orders to shut down the meeting of churches and did not consider us essential. And while we know that many people have struggled with mental health, meeting with church for the ability to pray, study scriptures, and take comfort from one another was vitally important. Secondly, many of us understand things such as the pandemic and social distancing and masks. So at our place, we simply had the ability to place people being seated further than 6 feet apart. In fact, what I did at our church was I placed people sometimes 20 and 30 feet apart. And we said there was an RSVP so that when we reached up to the level, we would cut that RSVP off. And so we in our own right can make those determinations as we see fit. Now, I realize that some might not do that, but we certainly were complying with the spirit of what Governor Northam wanted to do without maybe possibly complying to the letter of the edicts. Now Governor Youngkin has decided to use the same executive power, and I'm not in favor of that either. I'm in favor of limiting executive power when it comes to telling churches what they can and cannot do, whether it is both Democrat or Republican, whether it's what Youngkin says, take your mask off, or I don't think that our state of Virginia should be ruled by executive fiat or executive orders as it is. So I'm in favor of allowing churches to make their own determination based on their belief about what the scriptures say. Some churches actually believe, and I have pastor friends who say, this, do not forsake, as the scriptures that I'm quoting, do not forsake the assembling of yourselves together, as the manner of some is. So we are asking for you to kindly allow us to make those determinations ourselves, because we deem it essential for the mental health and spiritual well-being of those who are involved. Thank you very much for hearing, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, next.
Russell Evenson, please unmute to begin your testimony.
Hi, Pastor Russell Evenson of World Outreach Worship Center in Newport News. I concur with the previous pastor in that we complied with mask wearing. We complied with social distancing. We sanitized our building. We bought the fogger, the mister, and before and after and during every service, we used that. We had a team that wiped door handles, doorknobs, every restrooms constantly to make it a safe place and environment for people. Certainly common sense would dictate to the pastor and his governing board that in such a case of emergency, as Senator Eben had mentioned, we would certainly comply with the law if there was a community emergency in the area that, as he stated up in Boston, common sense would tell us that we should comply with that. And we did everything within our ability, and even went, we feel like, above and beyond it to sanitize our building and take care of our people and take public health and safety into effect. I would encourage the voting of yes on House Bill 775. Just a couple of points, try to make this real brief, that the congregations of churches throughout the state of Virginia really have proven to be essential during a time of crisis and pandemic such as COVID. Some of the statements that the previous pastor made, that we lended emotional support through counseling during these mandated lockdowns and restrictions and the trauma that COVID-19 caused on many, many people. We also provided food and financial assistance for those whose jobs were affected, either lost their jobs completely or their hours were reduced and weren't able to make it in paying their bills and even have food for their families. The church also, not just our church, but many churches in our area, and I'm sure throughout the state of Virginia, provided safe and sanitized
quickly.
Locations for children to come to study, as their parents were essential workers and had to report in. And we provided also the spiritual comfort for many, many people in Virginia. So thank you for your consideration. A yes on HB 775. Thank you.
Michael Hines, please unmute and begin your testimony.
Thank you so much for hearing me. I would concur with, obviously, the other speakers that we, as people of faith, I think exhibited that we were people of goodwill. We were not enemies of the Commonwealth at any point in this process, although sometimes we felt a little bit as though we were responsible, reasonable people. I'd concur with my colleagues that we're essential. We always considered ourselves essential workers. We always considered ourselves first responders. And that has proven with the widening mental health crisis that has engulfed this state and this nation in the last 2 years. We've seen that more and more. And so I do feel that there has to be some limit on the undue burdens placed upon churches. I represent a church that actually didn't own its own facility. And the burdens that we had to walk through, the incredible restrictions we had to navigate, that would change on sometimes a weekly basis, that would be at times reasonable and at times completely unreasonable. And we had to pick and choose which ones we were going to abide by and which ones we were not going to abide by. We do it as people of faith, holding our sincere religious convictions as the standard by which we judge those. I just remind you that as Christians, we as the founders of this Commonwealth and of the United States, determined we actually do answer to a higher law when it comes to the exercise of our religion. And so there are times where we will make the choice on behalf of our own congregations and our own conscience over particular executive orders. We had to do that. I think we've all come through this. We've learned some lessons, but we certainly want to put a marker in the sand that this is not a precedent for the future. So I'd strongly support this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. All right, does anyone in the audience wish to speak in favor of this?
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Todd Gackey from the Family Foundation, speaking in favor of House Bill 775. This bill addresses something that is fundamental to all of us as Virginians, as Americans, the ability to organize and worship at a place of worship and meet there. And keeping the doors open to places of worship is essential for any society. Just think right now in Ukraine, people, Muslims, Jews, Christians, are meeting in underground bunkers to worship and unite during this troubling time. And throughout the pandemic, places of worship have been a lifeline for so many individuals. I want to tell you about a place in Hyderabad, India, and I apologize if I mispronounced that. Pastor Satish Kumar is a pastor of one of the fastest growing churches in the world. And during 2020, they gathered 1.4 million pounds of food through charitable donations to feed tens of thousands of Hindus, Muslims, and Christians, giving out kits of food to feed families of 4 for up to a month. He also allowed his facilities to be used for up to 300 beds for a COVID isolation place. A place of worship is vital to so many who are struggling with mental health issues and like depression and addictions. These people need fellowship and accountability. They need to be in person where they can continue to battle these challenges. And in Virginia, places of worship in so many areas were forced to close their doors, taking away something that is so vital and cherished by so many. It is important to mention that faith leaders are going to exercise wisdom as well when there are challenges that come about. The ability to attend worship services in person is vital to the physical and mental health of so many, and that's what makes this bill important for all faiths, all religions. So I hope you will support 775. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone to speak in opposition to the bill?
If you are in the Zoom room and wish to speak in opposition to this bill, please raise your hand electronically now. Mr. Chairman, there are no speakers.
All right. You want to sum anything up, and then we'll take action.
Senator, I believe everybody here has testified pretty accurately, and I'd ask you guys to push this bill through for us so we can get this thing done.
All right. Okay. Senator Vogel.
Mr. Chair, I was just going to say, I know that we in the legislature and then certainly our executive, we wish to regulate the health and safety of Virginians. But I would hope that when it comes to people's right to worship, that our temples and our mosques and our churches would be a sacred space and a place of refuge, and that we would draw the line and we would say that no matter what, we would not stand in the way of people's right to be in that sacred space. And so I favor this bill, and I would hope that the members of the committee would do that, and I would make a motion, but I see you have 2 people who want to speak on the committee, so I would reserve that. But when the time's appropriate, I would move to report the bill.
All right. Senator Evan.
Oh, I'm sorry, I already spoke.
All right. Senator Kiggins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just quick comment.
Yes.
I know when we attended church during the pandemic, I mean, that was by far the safest place that we went. And I think that, each church, and we heard some of the speakers just talk about the safety measures they put in place. So I know that they take that very seriously. And we sat 6 feet apart. They sterilized everything. They brought in all kinds of cleaning. So it was by far the cleanest place that we went. And therefore, I felt safe. What I didn't feel safe about was when I went to the church and the doors were closed and I couldn't get in. And knowing that that's a constitutional right provided to me and my children who attend church every weekend, that was most upsetting. And it was a personal choice. I didn't have to go to church. I could have watched church on television or not gone. But that was my choice and that was my right. And I felt like that was taken away from me. And that was more disconcerting than probably most of what happened during the pandemic. So thank you very much for bringing this bill, and I'm proud to support it.
Senator Hashmi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just to speak briefly in opposition to the bill, I certainly, as a person of faith, I certainly appreciate the desire, the need of so many individuals to congregate. I actually saw the opposite during these past 2 years, and that was the level of spirituality and creativity that so many different congregations were able to engage in, whether they were having worship through Zoom and through other mechanisms. They were able to continue with their faith. But more importantly, I think something that a couple of folks have already spoken about is the level of charity, the level of giving, and the level of compassion that we saw these past couple of years through our faith organizations. I know I participated regularly on Saturdays and Sundays for several months as the Islamic Circle of North America, located here in Henrico County, gathered food, sorted it. We would actually drive out all across the greater Richmond region, delivering food to families in need because of the order to stay at home. I think we saw our faith communities rise to the occasion, understand that there was an opportunity here to really, truly live out their faith and to deliver compassion and serve their spiritual needs by these means. I think we are moving in a dangerous ground if we take away the authority of our government to act in measures that protect the health and safety of our communities in this regard. And I think we need to have the ability of the executive branch or even those of us in the legislature to be able to respond to what our healthcare communities, particularly our physicians who specialize in infectious diseases, are telling us is necessary, absolutely necessary, in order to control a viral spread of the sort that we've seen with COVID. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Yes, Senator Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have to disagree a little bit with the last, because what we saw during the pandemic was a great level of subjectivity. And so we were allowed to go to the liquor store, and there was no limit on how many of us could go and congregate in the liquor store, and we could go to Walmart, we could go to other places, but we were forbidden from going to church, which is a fundamental right of any person. And a lot of us did do church by Zoom, and that worked out just fine. But it should be the congregation's decision, and we as a body certainly understand that people have enough sense to do what's right and to protect themselves and to protect others. But the subjectivity of this whole thing is what bugs me. Because there's a strong case to be made that we would have been a lot better off in church than we would have been in the liquor store.
All right, anyone else wish to comment?
Senator, could I have the final word?
Just quickly, yeah.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say, ultimately the decision here is, does one man or woman have the authority to violate our First Amendment right without any without any input from anybody else? That's the question. And I hope that you'll say, no, that's not what's allowed, and vote yes on this bill.
All right. If there's no one else to speak, Senator Vogel, did you say you wanted to make a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I move we report the bill.
All right. It's been a motion and a second.
Substitute motion.
All right.
Move to pass by indefinitely.
Second.
All right. We have a substitute motion to pass by indefinitely. We will vote on the substitute motion first. So, all right, open the roll.
Ayes 7, no 7.
Ayes 7, no 7. The motion fails. We will now go to the primary motion, which is to recommend report. So, all right, open the voting. So,
Ayes 7, no 7.
All right. There is no motion that passes, so that, but there,
Thank you all for hearing me again. Thank you.